Hey there, it's Laura Wansek, and I'm so excited to share today a major stamp reorganization that I did. I took over 50 stamp sets and I cut my stash in half by reorganizing the stamps by style and theme.
If you watched my recent scrapbook room organization video, you will remember that I said in that video how I like to set boundaries with myself around the quantity of products that I have. And one of the boundaries that I have set with myself is that I don't want to have more stamps than can fit on this ledge in my scrapbook room. So if you want to know more about that, check out that video. I was thinking about my stamps recently and how I love stamps. I don't want to stop buying stamps, but I do want to commit to keeping the space that I have right now for stamps, because I really don't want to have to look through more space than I currently have to find a stamp. So I have thought about doing this project that I'm going to tell you about in just a second for a really long time, and I just haven't been sure if I want to commit. And I recently, yesterday, decided I'm just going to do it. Partly because I feel like I won't know until I do it, right? And second, because I feel like I'm feeling called to it. So let me share what I'm doing. You know, whenever you get a clear stamp set, it comes like this with lots of different pieces separated on a piece of plastic. So I tend to think of stamp sets as a full set. Like I think about this as the stamp set. But it sort of occurred to me that really what you're buying is a collection of different stamps, and you might not love all of the stamps in a set. And so what's happened for me as I have, had stamps now for several years is that there are a lot of sets where I really am keeping the set just for a few of the different stamps. So this actually is not an example. I'm going to keep this whole set. But let's say that you had a stamp set and you were like, I actually only really like this speech bubble and this little banner. I don't think I want to use the other stuff. I've had this for 5 years and I haven't used anything other than those two pieces. So what I did was I went through probably 20 or 30 different stamp sets. And I just pulled out the stamps that I really feel like I'm truly going to use. And I would say that on most of the stamp sets, I was grabbing like 1 or 2 stamps, and that the rest I was like, I don't want anymore. So this big pile of stamps here represent that. So I have cut them out, or not cut them out, I just peeled them off, and they're just separate little pieces. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to make my own kind of custom sets with these. The other reason that I'm excited to do this is because the way that I hunt for stamps is often based on the type of stamp I'm looking for. So I'm excited to put some of these pieces together, and I'll share more about that in a little bit. So my plan here, I have these pieces of plastic. These are linked in my Amazon affiliate link if you're interested. They are double-sided with a peel-off plastic. And you can cut this pretty easily on, at least I can, I don't know on every trimmer, but I have a guillotine trimmer and it cuts these really nicely. So it's nice and sturdy and thick, but also bendable. So it's definitely more sturdy than the typical plastic that comes in a stamp set. So what I'm going to do is you can buy these stamp sleeves from Studio Calico. This is a 4x6, but you can buy them in 3x4, 4x6, and 6x8. So I'm going to buy a 10-pack. I'm probably going to get 6x8. I'm not sure exactly which sizes I'm going to get. I'm going to cut down this sheet to fit in here. I'll measure to find out exactly what it is. Then I'm going to create little sets from all the pieces from the sets that I have taken apart, and I'm going to group them by type. So this one, you can see these are patterns. They're like patterned strips. And these are from a variety of manufacturers, but they're all clear stamps. And so what I'm going to do is, after I get these all on here, I'm going to stamp using my Misti stamp platform. I'm going to stamp onto one side of the plastic to be like the guide, right? Because if you look here, you can see printed so that you know when you put the stamp away where to put it. So I'm going to stamp on one side, and then they're going to cling to the other side and slip in the sleeve here. So I'm really cutting down on the quantity of stamps, but I'm really making sure that it's easier to find the ones that I actually am going to use. So let's get started.
For these 12x12 graphics plastic sheets that I used, there is a kind of protective coating on both sides of it. which is great because you can cut it and move it around and, figure out placement and all of that before you peel it up so that you're not kind of scratching up the plastic during all of this preparation. So I'm just cutting them down to 6x8 size and 3x4 size. Not exactly 6x8. I think it's 5.5x8. And I think the plastic sheets are 3x4. So whatever sleeves you end up using, you just want to kind of measure to make them a little bit smaller, because when you put the stamps on it, it does make it thicker and kind of bulks it up. So you want to make sure that there's space to put them for it to fit in the sleeve. So you'll see in this video that there's a real trial and error process here. I tried this a lot of different ways, and there's a lot of different ways that you could do this. You could stamp these on plastic, you could stamp them on paper. I tried the plastic, but the StazOn ink was just too much of a pain to clean. And I thought, I'm doing so many sets of this, I don't want to have to clean and mess up all these stamps. So I end up stamping on paper instead. But, you could do this. I mean, it looks kind of cool. You cling it to the back there and then slip it in the sleeve, and it does look more like a standard stamp set, which I think is the perk of doing it that way, to kind of create some uniformity in your stamp collection. The first step of this process is really going through all of the stamp sets, and I took precision scissors and just cut out all the pieces that I want to keep, and then all the ones that I didn't want to keep, I put in a big box, and I'm going to do a giveaway. So I also organized the things that I cut out, somewhat by type. So I put all the numbers together, all the shapes together, etc. So I'm using a Misti platform stamping tool to create these patterns of stamps. It's really, I think, an essential tool for doing this project. And there are a few different reasons for that. So there's two ways to build a pattern here. You can do what I'm doing here, where you're laying the stamps down face down, so basically looking at them the way they would be stamped on the plastic sheet, or later when I actually realize that I don't want to stamp with StazOn, you would be laying them on paper. You could lay it like this and then use the swinging Misti door to pick the stamps up and then ink them and stamp them down. The other thing that you can do, and this is really best if you're working with tiny little sentiments that are hard to move around a piece of paper and keep straight, is you could lay a piece of paper underneath the left swinging door there and arrange them, so that that they're going to be sized well for the paper, and then stamp them and swing them over onto the paper. The downside of that is then you have to line the paper up on the right side to match the left side. So there's really a couple of different ways you could do it. It just kind of depends on what kind of stamps you're making. So I clung, when I did the sheets of tiny little quotes, I put a sheet of paper behind the left door there when it's laid flat like that, put all the strips down, and then stamped them. But you could do it, however works for you. So why is a Misti helpful? So stamps are different heights. I don't know if it depends on the manufacturer or when they were made. I don't know what the difference is, but some stamps are just thicker than others. So I'm using a little eraser there to go over the Misti so that I'm getting some even pressure on all the stamps, but even still, some of them are thick enough that I'm not able to get an impression on the thinner ones. So what I'm doing here is I'm removing some, and then I'm going to keep stamping until I get to the more stubborn ones at the end that need to be stamped. This would not work as well if I didn't have the Misti stamping tool, because I would have to individually stamp all of these, and I might have to do them multiple times, and you're just not going to get as crisp of an image if you're doing it with a block. It's just gonna be a lot harder. So you can see I'm doing this over and over until I get those last few. I'm putting pressure with the eraser on some of the sections. Like you can see the bottom part of these stories circle stamp, it just would not budge. It's so funny, it just would not. Yeah. And the guide, this part just does not have to be perfect. I mean, it's just a guide, right? It's just so that you know what stamps are in the set. And I've used these enough that I know what they look like. I just need to kind of have some sense of placement for where to put them or where to pick them up when I decide, oh, I want to use that one. Oh, it's to the left of that other one, and I can quickly grab it and quickly put it back. So then when it's time to pick them all up and put them on the plastic, you lay them all down, kind of like in a puzzle, lay them all down on the stamped image and then pick it up with the piece of plastic, and then you have your little guide there. And then I'm putting the stamped image there on the front so that when I'm going through my stash, I can see the guide and how they look when they're stamped really easily.
I'm going to go through and kind of share how I ended up organizing them thematically. So, there's really no right or wrong way to do this. There's lots of different possibilities. Like if you think about a library, right, you can organize by author or theme, and there's no right way. You just have to kind of do whatever makes the most sense for you and how you scrapbook. I would really suggest that you think, how do I scrap? So if you're somebody who really is like a monthly scrapper and you always are looking for anything kind of seasonally themed, then make your card seasonally themed. Or if you're like a holiday scrapper, put all of the holidays together. So for me, I tend to be looking, by the time I'm getting to the embellishment point, I'm really looking for a shape and a size of stamp. So that's why I ended up putting a lot of my shapes together. So you can see here, like these 3 sheets, these are all circles. And this is helpful to me because before I was having to look through all of the story kits to find circles, and that was taking way more time than just looking at a quick circle sheet. So that's why I'm so glad that I did this.
I also did a couple of heart sheets, and you can see that there's space left, especially there on the right, for me to add to. So the heart with words inside of it, or a circle with words inside of it, is a very Ali Edwards thing. So I presume that as I continue to subscribe to story stamps that I'm going to get more of those. So I will add them, to those sheets as I get them. And then I love this number one because these, were all over the story kits, and I was definitely not remembering, which sets had numbers. So it's really nice to have all of those together now, and I can put them with my alphabet number stamps. These 2 are the ones I'm most excited about. So I'm often looking for stamps that say story or stories because I love to do story compilation layouts. And I have asked Allie before, I'm like, can you make a set that's just like story words? And now I've made it myself. I don't need her to make it because I did it, right? I just grabbed a bunch of the ones that already say story. So I'm excited about that. These are really tiny word strips. I use these all the time for just filling up maybe a journaling card that has a little bit of extra space, or creating maybe a border of words. I did an icon sheet that I showed a little minute ago. Those are handwritten words or just words in general. This one's really fun. This is a contrast sheet. So these are like opposites: lost, found, love, loathe, easy part, hard part. There are lots of different ones I found like that. So if I'm doing any kind of story that requires contrast, I'll remember to grab that sheet. And then these are just random, sentiments, quotes that I like. You can see again that there's space to grow, that, if I get something, I can add to these things. Got these pattern sheets here that are really fun. I'll probably put these with some of my background stamps. I'll probably start grouping those together. Again, I think that I just wasn't using a lot of these because I wasn't thinking to hunt for them. So I'm excited now that I think I'll use these a lot more because I've reorganized these. I use ampersands a lot, so I was excited about that. Love that number set. That was in the number story stamp. Those were 2 smaller sets that I put together there in that 3x4. Those are some random weather sentiments that I had, and images. Arrows, just random little things. That's a little set of sentiments around things being tough and hard. You and me and us and our. Again, I can add to that one. I love those little dots because I love making polka dot patterns. So I'm really glad I have all this together now. So when I want to make a polka dot pattern, I can just grab that and pick the right size dot, rather than, again, having to hunt through a bunch of stamp sets, not even remembering exactly which ones have tiny dots, I'm really glad that I did this. I really think this is going to help me use my stamps more. It kind of refreshed my stamps. I feel like I got a bunch of new stamps, but I didn't. I just reorganized the ones I had.